Hello, everyone. We will first welcome to today's webinar. We'll wait 1 minute for others to join. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Molly White, and I am with the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute. And we are absolutely delighted to be able to host this informational session on the online graduate certificate in greenhouse gas management at George Washington University. My role today is to be your guide through today's session, and I will introduce our first speaker and also facilitate the question and answer section at the end of the webinar. Let's see. Before we dive in, just a few words on logistics. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available in an email to participants and then posted to the program website. Today, the webinar's content will last roughly 30 minutes, leaving ample time for your questions at the end of the content. And at any time, there are two ways you can ask a question. You can post it in the questions box within your GoToWebinar panel, or you can post it within the chat box. I'll be monitoring both of those, and so we can get your questions answered following the presentations. And if you have any technical difficulties, I can try and help. You can send me a note via the chat box to me directly, the organizer. So with that, I want to introduce our first speaker, Rachael Jonassen. She will be introducing our other speakers on today's webinar as well. Rachael is the program's director. She's actually calling in from a World Bank meeting today. She's participating in the science advisory meeting of the climate policy, or excuse me, the Climate Pricing Leadership Coalition. So the content is, I suppose, in alignment with some of the topics we'll be discussing on today's webinar. So with that, Rachael, I will hand the baton off to you.
Thanks, Molly. Hi, I'm Professor Rachael Jonassen, the director of the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute at George Washington University. I'll give you information about the administration of the certificate program in greenhouse gas management and how your online learning will work. And then two others related to our program will give more details. Dr. Michael Gillenwater is Dean of the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute and someone I've worked with closely over the past few years as we developed this collaborative offering in greenhouse gas management, the first of its kind in a university graduate engineering program. Dr. Gillenwater will tell you more about the courses you will take in the program and how they prepare you for the rapidly growing field of greenhouse gas management. Professor Phil Ludvigsen is our other speaker today. Professor Ludvigsen is one of 5 faculty within the program who will support your learning, and he offers a deep background in greenhouse gas management and associated issues in climate change. Professor Ludvigsen will give you more detail about the courses he teaches in this program. That course is available this fall semester beginning at the end of August. It's called Greenhouse Gas Management, Measurement, and Reporting. Next slide, Molly. Let me first tell you a little about the institution where you will earn your certificate. The George Washington University was established by an act of Congress in 1821. It has 10 colleges and schools, including the School of Engineering and Applied Science, your home in the university. GW hosts about 25,000 students, and about 14,000 of those are graduate students. So we are deeply steeped in graduate and professional education. Within the School of Engineering and Applied Science, there are 5 departments, and yours Engineering Management and Systems Engineering is one of the largest and oldest in the United States, with over 1,500 students. About 95% of our students are graduate students, and 65% are off-campus students like you will be in this program. The certificate has been jointly developed and offered by both institutions, the George Washington University and the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute. We worked closely with GHGMI for several years to design the program and get it approved. The certificate program and the 4 courses that make up the program have been fully approved by the GW Faculty Senate and the administration. We began offering live courses in spring of 2017 and have now completed a full year and offered all the courses. So this spring we awarded our first certificate, another important milestone for the program. You will find them listed in the certificate catalog, the courses. There are 4 graduate level courses of 3 credit hours each. The really good news is that all courses can be applied to graduate programs at GW, including the online programs that lead to a master's degree in engineering. Even more exciting is that the university has only recently approved an entire online master's degree in climate change, and all these courses count towards that degree. Credits can also be transferred elsewhere since GW is a fully accredited university. To create these courses, we worked with the GW eDesign shop, the university's expert in cinematography, audio editing, animation, graphics, and the art and science of learning. You'll experience really top quality videos as part of your learning. We also work closely with the Instructional Technology Lab, which hosts and supports the online learning system. Each course has an online librarian working directly with you and the instructor to ensure that you have full access to the extensive online knowledge resources of the university. You'll use Blackboard as the learning management system housing all the materials for the course. It has full capabilities for online learning, and I'll illustrate some of those in a minute. As part of your learning experience, you'll participate in a live synchronous session each week using Blackboard Collaborate. It gives you full two-way audio and video connections so you can see and be seen by others in the class. You can also use Collaborate yourself to set up chats with your professor and your fellow students. The preferred sequence for taking the courses is in their numerical order, 62, 90, 91, 92, and so on. But you can pair them, taking 6290 and 6291 simultaneously, and 6292 and 6293 simultaneously, and there is really full flexibility in the order as long as you have the instructor's permission. We worked closely with the directors at GHGMI to select professors with the exact expertise and teaching ability needed for these courses. Besides myself, you'll work with Professor Marco Buttazzone, Professor Mark Trexler, and Professor Ludvigsen, who you'll hear from later. You can get more information about the faculty from our website. Normally, 2 courses will be available online per semester, so you can finish the certificate in just 1 year. We are now accepting applications for the fall semester, which begins at the end of August. The expected minimum level of effort for each course is 7.5 hours per week. Fees for these courses are reduced from those for campus courses by about 1/2 and are $995 per credit hour. For admission to the program, you must satisfy these requirements. First, you must have a suitable bachelor's degree, such as in engineering, mathematics, or science, or a different bachelor's degree with appropriate work experience, which you must document. Second, you must have a B or better average in your junior and senior years and must submit a transcript. Third, you must also submit a statement of purpose, indicating your career objectives and how you see the certificate fitting into those plans. Admission decisions are made on a rolling basis, and you will be notified within a few weeks of the admission decision. Your applications for spring for fall are due by the end of July. Excuse me. There are 3 options for enrolling in courses in this program. Option 1 is to apply for the full certificate. Most choose this option. Option 2, if you're already admitted into a graduate degree program at GW, you can also sign up for the classes with or without getting the certificate. And option 3, if you want to take one course, perhaps try out the program before applying for the certificate, you can register as a non-degree student and sign up for a single course. Next slide, please, Molly. Now for the fun stuff. Let me tell you a bit about the learning experience. Blackboard is a really rich learning environment, and you'll find a lot of resources packed into each course. You're seeing a round-the-clock look at a few of them here. Let's go clockwise from the top left. You'll use and construct wikis to share knowledge with your colleagues. Next, you see me in the lab to explain tougher concepts like radiative forcing. Video segments usually are about 5 to 7 minutes long. In the top center, a few students from an earlier class are discussing the problem of bunker fuels and emissions from international shipping and methods to reduce them. You'll get access to many interviews with experts in each area. In the upper right, I'm interviewing a world expert on solar energy. Blackboard hosts discussion boards, and we have one for each week of the semester, where you are challenged on a particular topic and share your ideas and thoughts. The spider diagram in the lower right shows a special tool Professor Trexler uses in his class called Climate Web. I know you'll find lots of uses for this in class and out. Because GW sits in the midst of the nation's government and international policymakers, you have special access to unique expertise. For instance, we collaborate with the World Bank Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition, where I am right now, which is just a few blocks away from my office. At the bottom center, you see 3 experts from the Government Accountability Office speaking about challenges the federal government faces in mitigating greenhouse gas emissions in the video they helped us produce specially for this program. You'll encounter many similar special videos. On the left side, you see an actual Blackboard system with its blue navigation pane and an example exercise. This is one of many exercises you can select in one of 5 lessons in each week of my course. I provide more exercises than you need to do, and you get to select the ones that work best for your learning style. For instance, if you like to learn by listening to videos, choose one of those. If you learn by reading a text, there's that option. If you learn by doing, create a video to report results. Finally, in the center, you see one of the ways we help keep your learning on track as the course progresses. Each learning video contains stopping points shown by the green boxes at the bottom. They may point to additional resources or may quiz you as illustrated here. We check your progress on these and work with you to clarify any points of confusion. You'll get instant feedback within the video and follow-up from your instructor. Well, I hope that gives you a flavor for the type of instruction you're in store for. Now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Gillenwater, who will tell you more about the content of the courses and how they prepare you for the global demand for experts in this field. Dr. Gillenwater.
Thank you, Dr. Jonassen, and welcome everyone to the webinar. I want to start by saying that all of us here at the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute are really proud to have co-developed this carbon management certificate with George Washington University. It's a culmination of a lot of work, as Dr. Jonassen said, over much time. But it's also a significant example of years of experience we've had working both in the US and internationally on these issues. And I'll discuss that more shortly. The courses that I'll also discuss shortly are built on this lengthy experience over 2 decades working on climate change policy, carbon markets, and greenhouse gas emissions accounting. This experience includes our active engagement in authoring international guidelines for greenhouse gas inventories, and which the numbers for are the core of carbon management, because if you don't know what you're emitting, then you can't do anything about it. And this experience includes both work under the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which produces what there's colloquially known as the Bible of greenhouse gas accounting, but also the Greenhouse Gas Protocol and the various guidance documents that have come out of that, including for private sector reporting. It's also not widely known that GHGMI, our acronym for GHG Management Institute, we also have been actively training the technical compliance inspectors, what we call the expert review teams, both for the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and Kyoto Protocol. And these are sort of the core treaty reviewers that make the international system work. And a similar system is now being negotiated and eventually will be set up for the Paris Agreement. So there's a lot of experience that we're bringing to the table to help guide this program. It's shown us over many years and over many countries that there's enormous need for expertise in carbon management to support implementation of climate policies. And this is both within government and within the private sector. And that there really is a short supply of expertise that's both truly technical and truly has a broad understanding of the climate change policy landscape. What will also work to instill in you under the program is an understanding that the role of carbon management professional development isn't really just about technical competency, though. There's also a core ethical and career commitment component to it. Really what we mean by that is you're committing yourself to something bigger than yourself. It's not completely hyperbolic to say that the fate of the world is going to rest in the future carbon management practitioners around the world. If you really look at the science and take seriously the pathway we're currently headed on with respect to climate change, that things are going to get serious in the future. Again, if the science plays out the way it looks like it's going to. This particular slide that you're looking at shows a spread of carbon pricing policies around the world. If you count it all up, you'll be able to see that over a quarter of global emissions are already covered by emissions trading or taxing schemes, what we broadly call carbon pricing. And this coverage is all but certain to grow. I can say here, for example, that the state I'm in, Washington State, up in the northwest of the U.S., we're in the process now of gaining signatures to pass a first carbon tax in the U.S. that looks highly likely to pass, and many other regions around the world. There's active movement similarly. Excuse me. Next slide. The certificate program we're offering at GW is both uniquely focused and comprehensive. Over 1 or 2 years, you'll develop the skills needed to be a practicing carbon management expert. And I'll explain how it's both focused and comprehensive by stepping through some of the topics we'll cover. First, as I mentioned, you'll get the essential background on climate change policy and climate science, both looking at domestic context and the international context. You really can't stress too much how important it is to have a deep understanding of policy, because greenhouse gas mitigation actions are so heavily driven by policy, both at local levels, at national levels, and international levels. We'll, of course, dive deep into the rules with the coursework on how to do greenhouse gas accounting. That's looking at all the methodologies, the calculation rules, the different protocols. This will focus on the energy sector because it's a dominant source of emissions. And when it comes to analyzing how to reduce emissions, we will, which we call project level accounting, will also focus on energy efficiency and renewable energy technologies. An especially unique aspect of this curriculum is the course on how to use information technology for greenhouse gas data management, as well as the critical process of how to be a verifier of emissions data. These are sort of the deep technical skills that only serious practitioners have. And again, that's why we focus an entire course on it. Next slide. For those of you that choose the option of completing a final course project, there is the possibility of writing up your work and having it published as an article in the peer-reviewed Carbon Management Journal, which is sponsored by the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute, and which I happen to be a co-editor for. Next slide. Now, you see here listed the 4 specific courses in the certificate program, which I discussed the content of which a second ago. In addition to receiving your certificate, your course credit after completing these courses will be also fully transferable into either a master's degree or PhD program. Now, let me introduce Dr. Levikson, who is instructing course 6291 on greenhouse gas measurement and reporting. He will give you an overview of this fundamental course. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gillenwater. I appreciate that. Just a little background on myself. As the slide says, I'm sort of a lifelong student. My wife refers to me as a professional student, but lifelong sounds better. I do have graduate degrees in civil environmental engineering, computer science, statistics, as well as an MBA in finance. Before joining First Environment, where I currently work and I head up new and emerging environmental markets, I worked for 6 years at KPMG Canada, where I headed up carbon advisory for that accounting firm. Along the way, I've earned GHG certification as a verifier and a quantifier. I've been involved with hundreds of facilities, primarily in North America, but some around the world. More recently, I've picked up a certification as a responsible investment professional. And lastly, I do have some experience as a professor at Rutgers. In short, I guess you could say I know a little bit about a lot of different things, but this is one area that I'm very particularly excited about. Next slide, please. For this course on GHG measurement and reporting, there's 4 major objectives. Starting at sort of a high level, we'll be assessing the objectives of a GHG inventory in order to build design and optimize that inventory. Basically answering the question, what do you want to do with your inventory? Because there's many things you can do, from an inventory for a complete country or city down to a private organization, or even a particular product where life cycle analysis comes into play. And moving down a little bit to a more tactical level, we'll be looking at specific program requirements for the accounting and reporting of greenhouse gas emissions, which is helpful. And getting down to that ground level, we'll actually prepare, analyze, and interpret GHG data in response to specific regulations, both national and global, as well as international standards. And lastly, even though you may not all be involved in building a GHG inventory professionally, I think it's safe to say that you will be involved in reporting greenhouse gas emissions at some point in your career. So it's important that you understand how these reports come together what are the strengths and weaknesses, so you can end up critiquing them. Next slide, please. So rolling up our sleeves, the course is probably one of the more technical compared to the other ones. We will actually get down and look at activity data, as you know, the types as well as the challenges that we face when we gather this kind of data. In particular, missing data is a major challenge. We'll also look at emission factors that are typically publicly available. There's many to choose from. Again, there's strengths and weaknesses. Fortunately, if you're operating under a particular regulation or program, those emission factors will be selected for you. Nonetheless, it's important to understand the uncertainties around them. And, you know, following this simple calculation, we can come up with a GHG emission estimate for what we call a particular asset, which includes projects as well as sort of the carbon footprint for a particular product. So there's many different aspects to the calculation. And as we get into the specifics, we'll notice that there are some complexities such as conversions that have to be made, especially when you're dealing with site-specific or a product-specific emission estimate or measurement. And since we deal many times with different conversions, that is something that will have to be understood from country to country, metric to English systems, and other conversions that come into play. Next slide, please. So I'm sure you've heard it said, what gets measured gets managed. Well, what gets verified gets believed. And that's very important in these, you know, times where there's a lot of pushback on, you know, climate change facts. So the accounting and the rigor that's involved and the standards that define that rigor are extremely important. Starting out, we'll spend a lot of time with the GHG protocol that Dr. Gillenwater mentioned, and that is a seminal work, and it lays down the basics for greenhouse gas accounting, as well as the standards for measurement and reporting. Once we have that under our belt, we'll get into some more of the technical standards, such as the ISO 14064 series. Part one being the measurement and reporting for an entity, whether that be a city or a corporation. Part two being projects, which relate to carbon offsets. And part three is verification. We'll even delve a little bit deeper into that, just like financial accounting, where you have professional accountants. There's professional standards for GHG, accreditation of GHG verifiers. And part of that is making sure that the verifiers have the competency, experience, and credentials to, you know, that stand behind and offer credence to the opinions they offer. And next slide, please. The course itself is taught in the same format that was presented earlier. This is sort of the fun part where you will have different videos. The fellow you see in the picture there is my boss, Todd Delaney. He's the president and founder of First Environment. He also is the chairman for the Climate Change Coordination Committee for ISO, and acts as a liaison between the International Standards Organization and the UN. So I'm hoping we can get him to guest lecture on some of the interactions at the international level. We will have interactive class discussions, and hopefully you'll find them interesting. And next slide, please. as we roll up our sleeves and actually get involved in building an inventory, there's a case study application built around a multinational corporation we call APEC. Now, this company has a number of wholly owned affiliates around the world, involving many different industries, from electronics manufacturing to mining and some others in between. The reason we chose APEC is because it'll give you experience in a number of different sectors. And that's important because right now in your career, you may not know which sector you'll be dealing with. So this gives you a broad representation. It also allows you to get a flavor for the different challenges of building GHG inventories, at least corporate inventories or entity inventories around the world. Part of this will be involving building an inventory management plan for this corporation. Now, this is a group project. It goes throughout the semester, and as you learn more, the more you can add to your inventory plan as a group and make it better. We'll be looking at actual greenhouse gas emissions. We'll be performing some quality checks on the inventory data so you get a feel for what to expect out of the real world. To break things up, however, we will have topical news and events related to GHG quantification globally. And I'm just amazed every day on the different topics where a greenhouse gas emission impacts come into play. Most recently, I've been involved with the verification of greenhouse or green bonds, and many of them fall into the category of climate bonds. And as you'll learn from this course, that if you're going to make statements on the money or investment that's spent, a lot of it comes down to going back to the inventory and tracking trends in hopefully reductions. So that's an overview for our class, and that hopefully will give you an idea of what we're looking at. Next slide, and I believe we'll be moving into some questions at this point.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Michael and Rachel. This has been a terrific overview of the program. We did have a number of questions come in, so I will go ahead and Rachel, maybe we'll start with you first. We had kind of a practical question related to how many credit hours the course this fall is, and is that the same for all of the courses? And then the follow-on question was, are there any scholarships available?
Sure. Okay. Thanks, Molly. I appreciate the question. It's always a question that I get from people inquiring. The credit hours these are standard graduate university courses. So each course is 3 credit hours in duration, and there are 4 courses altogether. So you can do the math. 12 total credit hours. And then the question of support, the GW has lots of different kinds of support for various programs within the university. We do not have specific scholarships that are identified for this particular program, but once a student is admitted into a program, especially a graduate program like this one is, they are then open. They're allowed to apply for support for any of the range of types of support that are available within the university system. So financial aid is open for business with you. You can apply, and again, if you qualify, financial aid conceivably can be available. I don't want to make any promises because lots of people are always vying for that. It's a competitive thing, and it's not as if there's financial aid for everyone. So yes, there's financial aid, but not targeted for this, and it's a very competitive process that only occurs once you have been admitted into the program.
All right, thank you. Uh, Michael, this question might be best for you, Michael or Rachel, I suppose. You mentioned that the program has places an emphasis on the energy sector. We had a couple questions related to other sectors. Does the program cover the transportation sector, forestry sector, industrial processes?
Thanks, Molly. That's Michael. I think the easy answer to that is yes. There is a focus on energy sector. Fossil fuel combustion is the dominant source of emissions globally and in just about every jurisdiction. But other sectors will be covered. The case studies will address other sectors. In the technical guidelines to go through, we'll address other sectors. By energy, we mean it in the broadest sense. So anything that uses energy, that would be buildings, obviously energy production like power plants, but also transportation and industrial activity. And then the way we think about it, beyond that are kind of some unique industrial processes that aren't energy related. Obviously, there's agricultural activities like fertilizer, and everyone's heard of the infamous, cow gas releases from cattle, as well as forestry and forest carbon sequestration is clearly a key activity, and then things like methane from landfills and things like that. So all those will be addressed, but the focus will be on those energy emissions.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Phil, this question might be for you. Does your course cover other standards, other sustainability accounting standards, such as SASB, that companies are using as their sustainability accounting guidelines?
We do address them, and we let people know that they're out there. Sustainability is a much broader topic, obviously, than just greenhouse gases, but climate change is probably the number one environmental issue for many organizations. So we do touch on them. I do talk about SASB, as it relates to green investment and impact investment and materiality. We touch on that just briefly, but always linking it back to the greenhouse gas inventories and the role they play in quantifying impacts.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Michael, we had one student that was interested in using the program to develop a country-specific emission factor. Is this an example of a case study or a research project that they could do as part of the certificate program?
Certainly. Obviously, there's would never discourage ambitious students to do an interesting project like that. Within the standard curriculum, you'll be, as Dr. Ludwigson said, you'll be exposed to different kinds of emission factors, different sources, and obviously behind that is research and research papers and publications that were the basis of it. So you'll be exposed to all that and how emission factors are developed. If you want to go that next phase of actually developing your own, the first step with that would be clearly to do a literature review and make sure you understand what's out there already, which this course will help you with. But then that next step of actually methodological development, the professors, including myself, would be happy to advise you on how to do that and turn it into an individual project.
Great. Philip, this question goes back to you. Does the curriculum in your course cover how to estimate uncertainty?
We touch on that. There's many different methodologies for getting your arm around uncertainty. The standards, certainly address that. I wouldn't say we get into the point of actually quantifying uncertainty, but we do talk about the importance, and especially when it relates to data quality. And, you know, the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. So that uncertainty can be propagated throughout the estimates, and we do touch on it.
Okay.
And just to
Go
jump in, just to put it in the context, that question of uncertainty arises. We cover that within the first course in the program, the broad scientific issues of uncertainty, and then the final course within the program on assurance and verification. There's where you really begin to delve into that and how that influences the quality of the assertions that are made in greenhouse gas reporting. So it's an integral component of the program as a whole.
Okay. Great. We had one other question related to, you know, what this certificate, if it's used within, say, some of the standards or best practices for demonstrating competency. So I don't know who wants to take this one. I know the program's in its infancy, but Rachel, maybe you can address that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I understand the question, but it sounds like you know, where does this certificate take you, and you know, what can you do with the certificate once you're done? I think the first thing we want to emphasize is that this is a university's led program. It's a graduate level program, and you're getting a comprehensive exposure to all of the information you need in order to work in a leadership position within industry, within business, where you're seriously, you know, taking on the effort to reduce emissions in a way that the business you're going to be working with can still survive and thrive and doesn't go bankrupt. So these are pretty tough issues that people are dealing with here to be able to work in a system where we know in future the price of carbon is going to dramatically increase in order to be able to avert the worst issues that Dr. Gillenwater alluded to earlier. So the demand for people with this expertise is really quite large, and people are looking for the kind of qualifications that a university training provides. So I think in terms of the, you know, where you go from this, the field is pretty wide open. Those who follow the demand for expertise in this know that industry is getting more sophisticated in understanding what kind of knowledge they need from people that they hire to do this. And so that's what we're gearing to. And in that regard, that's another reason why we work with groups like the World Bank and the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition, because we're keeping in tune with how carbon pricing is growing throughout the world. So the best I can do is give you those sorts of assurances of how we're designing the system and how we're keeping it current and how we're responding to what we see as the driving forces and needs around the world.
Great. Well, I think we've touched on each of the questions asked during this webinar. So to close, I want to thank our panelists today and thank you all for carving out time in your day to learn more about this program. You will be receiving the webinar recording in a follow-up email. And likewise, in the event I missed your question or I misunderstood your question, please don't hesitate to email it to Rachel. You can see her email address on the screen. I know that she would be more than happy to answer all inquiries and help you navigate enrollment. So with that, thank you. Have a wonderful day or evening, and you can see the recording on the program page.
Thank you, Molly.